Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Rob Motive JT. Wanted to talk about the new bumper on the Jeep Gladiator a little bit today because, frankly, I've had a couple questions about it, and there's something I'm just not sure about on it either. First of all, we do still have the original sitting down here, not the original, but the aftermarket stubby that I put on. This thing is for sale. If anybody's interested, 50 bucks, it's yours, but it's local pickup only. I'm not going to ship it. It's too heavy, too much of a hassle. Does have a little bit of rust on it up on the top, something you'd probably have to touch up. But for 50 bucks, it's a pretty good deal, I think. So what I have on the truck here, it is the rock hard aluminum bumper. This one also comes in steel, but it's about 100 pounds heavier. And man, am I glad after muscling this thing around and installing it, it wasn't that bad. But I am glad it didn't have that extra 100 pounds in it. It was just easier to attach. Now, one thing I do want to say real quick before I get going, how the studs went into the frame itself. And I didn't show that on the video because, frankly, you can't show it. I mean, you could put a camera, I don't know where you'd put a camera, so I didn't show it on the video. But I will say it's pretty simple. You just slide the little spacers over the screws that go through and then just push it through the hole. It'll actually sit on the frame once you have it up there and not fall off, so you can kind of maneuver it a little bit. So anyway, just wanted to clear that up. That's how I actually did it. A question that I have had is about a winch. Can you put a winch on it? And it does come with this winch plate. It actually goes down below here. You can see two holes here, one over there, and then there's a couple in the front. It bolts on there, and then you would mount the winch. Here's some couple of holes in the plate itself, right up in front of the grill. It also has an option, or they have an option, where you can have a slit across the front. I believe it's behind where the license plate is, that you could have the cable and everything come through, and you could actually mount it down below on the bumper. Man, would that make this thing heavy to install if you had a winch mounted back there. But the answer is yes, you can. It comes with this plate. Obviously, I'm not using this, so we're just going to set that aside. Now, the bumper itself so far, and granted, I have not had it a long time, but the finish on it is 100%. Top grade, top class, no rust or anything like that. And let me tell you, down here, when you have welds and things, and by the way, the welding they did on this thing is awesome, first class. But if you were going to have any rust, you would start to see a little bit of brown along these seams. I don't have anything like that. It still looks brand new, dusty albeit, but brand new. No issues with it. We have a lot of humidity down here, and if you're going to get rust, it's going to show up pretty quick. I love it. I love the look of it. Love the way it's set up. It is a departure from the stubby, but it's still open enough that you can see all the tires or most of the tires and stuff, and that's a look that I love on the front of the truck. Plus, we don't have those closeouts like some of the Jeeps have had below the fender here, which blocks the view of the tire. I just like to see the tires, I guess. Now, my issue, I'm confused. I'm not quite sure what these are for, these holes, these brackets up here on top. I am assuming, you know what happens when you do that, right? I'm assuming that these are for lights. In other words, if you had a winch down here, you would go ahead and mount a light bar or pod lights like what I have down there up on top. It's got to be what it's for. I've thought about putting some sort of a light bar across here anyway, a smaller one, maybe, I don't know, 20 inch, 13 inch, whatever they are. I don't know what the size is. It's probably closer to 20 inches, right across the top here so that I could have maximum output of light on the front of the Mojave. Haven't really decided yet, because if I do that, then I'm going to have a wiring issue. I've got to run the wires probably down here behind, and then I would guess through the bumper. This slit here, by the way, is also, I believe, for the cabling for a winch. If you go ahead and put one on, you could bring it up here across the front. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a good place to run wiring if I had lights up here and then run it down across inside of some sort of shielding like I have right now. Not exactly sure what that's for. We'll have to see. Now, another thing I want to mention, my buddy Randall had his out. He was doing a little off-roading, I think, somewhere, and he got into some lower areas, and this does have a skid plate underneath. You can see it right along here. It's not bad, but it will ride, and I guess that's the point of a skid plate, right? It will ride anything that comes up. For instance, if you go down in deep ruts on both tires and you're against the ground, if there's anything sticking up in the air in the front, for me, that would be some kind of an alert that you should probably back up, because there are things underneath here that are much lower than where this plate is, which is actually part of the bumper. It's all one integrated piece. It's not a bolt-on like you get a lot of times with skid plates and things underneath the truck. The problem with that, I suppose, since it's not separate, if you damage it enough, you're really damaging the whole bumper. And if you're like me and that bothers you, you would have to go ahead and replace the whole bumper. It would get scratched up underneath there if indeed you're running over things that are going to impact it. Of course, the good thing about that, I suppose, is it is underneath. You could grab a rattle can and spray it off to protect it. Again, it is an aluminum bumper, so you really shouldn't have any rust issues or anything like that. Another question or comment that I've had about this bumper are the D-ring connections, or the brackets on the front. They are not an integrated part, if you will, of the bumper itself. They are welded on. Now, it is a pretty substantial weld. I mean, if you look at this, this is a, bigger, wider than a 1/4 inch bead on the brackets here to weld them onto the front. The concern is that if you put a lot of pressure on these, if you were really pulling on something or somebody was really pulling on you, that these would somehow break off. Now, I suppose that's a concern anytime you have a part that's not solely integrated into the unit that you're pulling against. But for me, I don't have any big concern about that. I think that the D-rings themselves would probably start to deform, and these are, I believe they're rated at 10,000 pounds, something like that. So I don't really have a problem with that myself, but as I always mention on the channel, never go with anything that you're not comfortable with. After all, it's your risk, your liability. You don't want to put something on that you're not happy with. I have no fear about these holding. I think they'd be fine, particularly if you hook up to both of them and kind of distribute the weight a little bit. I think you'd be just fine. Anyway, leave a comment down below, especially on these brackets across the top. What do you suppose these are for? Just lights? Or maybe there's something else that I'm missing. Help me out. Leave a comment. I'd be curious to know. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. Bye.